Support comes from Missouri Forest Products Association, committed to sustainable and sound conservation of the state's forests, which support more than 41,000 Missouri jobs, resulting in a $10 billion industry. ChooseWood.com.
From St. Louis Public Radio. This is St. Louis on the Air.
What's it going to take if it's not $20 an hour? Like I said, it's a reckoning.
They have all the hogs and they have all the cows. They just don't have workers to actually break them down and ship them across the country.
Or delivery drivers to deliver them. It goes all the way down the supply chain.
And these are all such tough jobs. Restaurant jobs are so tough. These meatpacking jobs are so tough. You can see why some people are saying, hey, this isn't worth it for me at this point.
That's our job, is to make it worth it for them.
I'm Sarah Fensky. As more and more St. Louisans can happily brandish their vaccination cards, more and more restaurants are gearing up to add capacity and add hours, or even just reopen after a year when they decided being open made little sense. There's just one problem, and it's a big one. Not enough workers to handle the demand. And here to give us the lay of the land is the Dean of St. Louis Food Writers and a former restaurateur himself, that's St. Louis Magazine dining editor George Mahe. George, welcome back.
Thanks so much. I haven't been called the dean since the last time you called me that, so I really appreciate it.
I am determined to make this a thing. I think that is how you should be known.
I'll take it. I'll take it. Thank you.
And we're also joined today by someone who is living this reality firsthand. Tom Schmidt is a St. Louis native. He's also the owner of the barbecue juggernaut, Salt and Smoke. So, Tom, welcome.
Thanks for having me. And I'm curious if the dean can get my my credits transferred over for Barbecue 101.
Dean works in several ways, Tom. Don't make me lecture you all about word use. But let's talk about this topic at hand, because it's a big one. And it's a topic that I think even for people not in the industry, people have a lot of opinions about it. Tom, you're about to open up your 5th Salt and Smoke restaurant. How big an issue is hiring right now for you?
It is the absolute number one priority on all of our team's list right now. We need about 100 employees for that location, and we plan to open it May 17th.
Wow.
And right now we have about 22 hired.
Can you open by Delta. May 17th? That's a lot of people.
We'll figure it out. Luckily we have 4 other locations, so we can kind of figure a way to kind of diffuse existing staff and make it happen, and just kind of plug in where possible. But obviously short 80 people is, that's just a huge amount.
So, George, I know you have your finger on the pulse of restaurants across the metro area. Has this become an increasing source of anxiety for them?
An increasing and pretty much universal. I don't think there's anybody that doesn't have a help wanted sign hanging out of their restaurant right now. It's as bad as I've ever seen it. I mean, I've been in this industry a long time. I've been, either operations or writing about restaurants for almost 50 years, and I've never seen anything like this. It's totally unprecedented. There's one chef that put it very aptly. He said it's a reckoning. And it is indeed.
And tell me what he means by that, or what you might mean by that. How is it a reckoning?
Well, it's just everyone knows the problem. There are just simply no employees. They aren't answering the ads. They're not coming in through traditional channels. And, the floodgates have opened. The customers are finally back. Restaurateurs are so excited to see them back, but there's nobody to cook for them, wait on them, or clean up after them. And it's just frustrating. They know the problem. They just can't solve it.
So, Tom, when it comes to this reckoning, I understand that while the pandemic has added all sorts of layers onto this, and we can dig into some of those, but this is something you noticed even before the pandemic. How so?
Oh, well, yeah, I think George can kind of corroborate this, but I don't know a restaurant in 2019 that wasn't also kind of regularly stating it's just so hard to find people. And, outside of COVID, there are just so many factors that have contributed to a really tight labor market for the hospitality industry. The perception that our industry isn't a long-term career path, that it's just a temporary thing, which we work really hard to change that perception. Obviously, there's been a lot of stalled immigration at the border that's caused a huge issue as well. And then really, I think the biggest issue that we don't really talk about is 16 to 22-year-olds that used to comprise so much of our workforce. Now, being a high school and college student is a full-time job. You have to be on 3 extracurriculars. You're on 3 club sports to make the high school team. You have to take 15, prep courses for your ACT, and that capacity to kind of fill in with another job is just not a reality. For people that are 16 to 22, I think that's a huge gap in the workforce.
Tom, you mentioned you have an economist friend who has done some tracking on this. He told you that it might result in 7 million fewer people just in that age group being interested in this industry. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of, I think it's the unseen force that is really plaguing all of us. And it's not, everybody wants to say millennials, or these aren't millennials, whatever they are, Gen Z is lazy. It couldn't be further from the truth. They're working extremely hard. It's just being a student is what they're working extremely hard at, and working 3 shifts a week at a restaurant as a bus person or food runner. It just really isn't in their schedule.
So, George, I want to address something head on, because there is so much chatter about one additional factor that a lot of armchair theorists are certain is driving all of this, and that is that they believe that it's tied to the increase in unemployment benefits. What's your sense of that?
I think there's definitely something to that. If you do the math on that, it's $600+ a week. That's, at 40 hours a week, that's $15 an hour. So restaurant operators or any employer has to consider that when trying to find employees. And it's $15 has become the base amount, which is a whole lot higher, 20% higher probably than a lot of restaurants have been paying. And even then, I talked to a guy that said he's paying $15 to $20 an hour, and he still can't find people. He can't get people to even show up for an interview, throwing that kind of money out ahead of time. And he said, what is a living wage anyway? It's a really good point. What's it going to take? If it's not $20 an hour, like I said, it's a reckoning, and it's going to translate. No matter what happens, it's going to come out in menu price increases, and that's just going to be a fact of life. And sticker shock is going to be a reality here this spring and summer, and I think the dining public better get used to it.
Tom, do you share George's thoughts? First, dealing with this issue of unemployment benefits, that this is maybe exacerbating some of these trends that you outlined there.
Yeah, I think it is. I don't blame anybody for taking that benefit. And like I was talking about earlier, I don't think by any stretch it's the sole cause of the current condition we're in. But it definitely is one of the factors that makes it even harder right now. And in terms of there's also no silver bullet on the menu price increases to tie what is going to cause that. Brisket and pork is costing us almost 75% more right now than it did even 2 months ago.
75% more? Is that just from increased competition as more restaurants reopen?
No, well, it's mainly exactly what we're talking about with the restaurant industry. There's nobody to work in the processing plants to actually fabricate beef into brisket or hogs into ribs. And so they have all the hogs and they have all the cows. They just don't have workers to actually break them down and ship them across the country.
Or delivery drivers to deliver them. It goes all the way down the supply chain.
And these are all such tough jobs. Restaurant jobs are so tough. These meatpacking jobs are so tough. You can see why some people are saying, "Hey, this isn't worth it for me at this point."
Well, and
that's our job, is to make it worth it for them, right? There's so many levers that we can pull to create really healthy, competitive, desirable environments, and that's what we're all working really hard to do, not just for this short time when I think it's a really acute pain, but going forward, how can we be best to people for years to come?
And let's talk about that. Before we do that, though, I want to let people know our phone lines are open. And if you're a restaurant worker or a former restaurant worker, somebody who decided this job is not for me, we want to hear from you. Call us at 314-382-8255. That's 382-TALK. You can also send us a tweet at STL on air, or you can email us at talk@stlpr.org. We have heard from some of our listeners. We have a St. Louis on the Air Twitter page. We have a Facebook page. Not Jane writes on Twitter, a reminder that restaurant workers in St. Louis have a long history of activism. It's why for decades and decades, many restaurants were closed on Mondays. Back in the day, the waiters union demanded it. And he adds, you go to work with a likely infectious and non-vax clientele in a tight space. Kind of makes a point there. George, I'm curious about your sense of whether this listener has the history correct. Does the waiters union, has that been a powerful force in this town?
I've never heard of that one. I heard a story that it was actually the Bommaritos that caused everyone to take Mondays off because Vince Bommarito wanted to be with his kids more, and he started closing his restaurant on Mondays, and everybody followed suit. So that's what I heard. But in any case, it's a tough business, and there are a few silver linings that people that get into this business and get out of it again, there's thoughts that maybe they'll drift back into it. As Tom well knows, it's addicting, it's fun, there's nothing like it, it's a rush, and maybe when some of these people try something else, perhaps they'll come back to this, and they're coming back to a different environment. I mean, Tom can tell you he's offering health insurance. He's now offering 401ks. He's definitely an out-of-the-box thinker here, and that's what it's going to take to get these folks interested in restaurants again.
So, Tom, you were just talking about the high prices of things, and 75% price increases are not for the faint of heart. Things like 401k and healthcare benefits, traditionally we've heard from restaurateurs that's something they'd love to do, they just can't afford it. How are you making that work?
When Haley and I made the decision to grow from one restaurant to the second restaurant, it really, for us, was driven by that providing the opportunity for us to expand our benefits and our teams and our pay because we would have more opportunity. And so that's our unique situation, and we've continued to grow, and now we buy our proteins directly and save 20 cents a pound, and buy 20,000 pounds a week, and we have explicit conversations that savings isn't for profit for us, but to figure out how to continue to grow and develop and support our teams. And that's a luxury we have, and we've worked really hard to build it. It's not the same for everybody, obviously, and every restaurant is so different in what they can do and how they can grow and how they can support people. And like I said before, there's no silver bullet as to how people can do that across the board, but that has to be the priority, and I know it is for everybody to solve that for our people.
George, do you think part of this reckoning is that more restaurants are going to say, you know what, we have to start covering things like healthcare benefits, and you know what, prices are going to go up?
Absolutely, and I think they really want to do it, but they're waiting for somebody else to do it. It's tough if you're the Lone Ranger out there. If it kind of becomes a universal accepted thing, everybody will do it, and everybody will be happy. But it's that I think needs to change. We've got to compete. You're not just competing with other restaurants, you're competing with the labor market in general, which offers things like that. Mm-hmm. You get health benefits, you get other perks that restaurants just have to deal with.
I want to go to the phone lines. Rob is calling from the Dogtown neighborhood. Rob, hi, you're on St. Louis on the Air.
Hi. I was going to say I was working in the service industry prior to COVID. I was working about 50 hours a week. I was able to make a lot of money. And there is also the demand aspect to this. And what my employers have basically told me is that until the vaccination rate is at that type of herd immunity level, that we just can't really return to doing things the way we were. So I still work part-time for my organization, and I make so little that I actually qualify for the federal benefit. But there are a lot of folks out there who really do want to go back and work. And I hear the sincerity in their voices.
And Rob,
saying,
is the reason that you were making so little just that your place had so many fewer tables? You weren't able to make the great large tips that you could make pre-COVID?
that's the name of the game. I mean, there's a demand issue, and there's in the restaurant industry, there's only so much money that can be spent. And the consumer, a lot of folks are, also aren't making as much money. They're making a decision to buy groceries. So it is kind of a two-way street. But I again, I'm sympathetic to what everyone's going through. We're all having a rough go of it, and we just want this to be over with.
Thank you, Rob, and I hope that for you as well. Tom, that idea of lower tips during these months when restaurants were at such smaller capacity and, on an average Tuesday night in St. Louis, it can be slow to begin with. You add in the winter and COVID. I imagine people who were willing to work took some pay cuts.
Yeah, I mean, the up and down nature of 2020 was just brutal. And what Rob was saying, I think, was really true for our teams through the winter and January and February. But now, since March, if weather's decent, we're regularly beating 2019's numbers at our stores, and our staff is making. I have nephews that are bus people that are making on average $48 an hour, week after week after week. I mean, the wages are really good, and in our experience, the demand from guests is really through the roof right now, which is, coupling that with a labor shortage, has created a lot more challenges. But for the people that are working, they're making so much more money because they're scooping up all of that extra business with fewer servers to split it among.
Yeah, $48 an hour. That's a terrific nest egg for your young nephews. Let's go back to the phone lines. Nicholas is calling from Florissant.
Yeah.
Nick, hi. You're on St. Louis on the Air.
Hello.
Hi. Thanks for joining us. What's your take on all this?
My take, I wanted to revert back to a statement I heard. I believe it was George that stated this, that there was a restaurant owner or manager that was finding it difficult to find staff at a $20 an hour rate. Mm-hmm. And I was just wondering if George could share what that restaurant is, because I have some folks I know that would be more than happy to take a job like that.
Well, Nick, thanks for that question. George, I don't know if you feel comfortable doing that.
No, I don't. He can contact me, and I'll be glad to do that, because I just don't feel right doing that.
I totally understand that. Yeah.
But there was no reason for this restaurant owner to sugarcoat that at all. So I do believe what he said.
Nick, if you can give our producers your phone number once we get you off the air here, we'll have George follow up with that, or have you follow up with him after the show. Because hey, if somebody's looking for a job, it sounds like George, that might be welcome news for somebody. But let's talk a bit about some of the solutions here. George, what are some ways that people are trying to track down and market themselves to customers to help with all of this going on?
Yeah, well, it's gotten very, very creative. A lot of it started with bonuses. Employees are paying workers signing bonuses. And now they're giving them bumps after 3 months and 6 months. It's really like, please stay with us. We're going to make it worth your while. They're paying existing employees a finding bonus, like a finder's fee. Bring your friends on, and they are even, rewarding them after 6 months. Keep your friend around, and we'll give you another bump. So these kind of things I've never heard of in the past. There's also a lot of them are doing print advertising and radio advertising, and you see a lot of TV stations doing stories about local restaurants. These kind of I haven't seen this type of attention in a while. Some of these stories end with oh, by the way, these guys are hiring. With the end of all these TV stories. So it's coming at us from all angles, and I believe that, gosh, if anybody's looking for a job, it's they're out there. One guy said, hey, it's going to get better when the college kids come back for summer, and really it's true. It doesn't matter where you want to work, whatever neighborhood, whatever restaurant, chances are those guys are hiring. One guy said that's going to be hopefully his saving grace is when the college kids come back. It remains to be seen.
Tom, I understand Salt and Smoke has been doing a marketing blitz to help fill all these new positions in this new restaurant that you are hoping to open on May 17th. What have you done, and has that been working?
Well, yeah, I mean, to George's first point, we have done all of that: signing bonuses, referral bonuses, just like just like deciding where you're going to eat is so heavily influenced by your neighbors or your friends telling you, "Oh, we had a great time at wherever," and then you check it out. The same is true for your employment, and if people are like, "Oh, they really treat their staff well and they pay well," you're more inclined to go apply there. So we're doing that, and then we've been doing radio blitzes as well. I'll note that 3 to 4 weeks ago, we needed to hire 200 people. So the fact that we're only looking for the last 80 is a sign that these things are working. We've covered 120 spots, which is phenomenal. It's a little over halfway there, and kind of a Herculean task to begin with. But yeah, every lever that we can pull, we have been pulling, and there is some success in it. And I think we'll get there. I am confident that we'll be pretty close come 10 days from now.
Well, George, I think of Tom as a pretty zen guy, and he sounds pretty zen right now. But in general, what kind of attitude do local restaurant owners have in the midst of what feels super stressful to me from the outside looking in?
Well, they're very resilient. They're very creative. A lot of them said, hey, we were creative going into this thing, and we need to be creative going out of it. So they're trying all these different things, but we have to look at it from the other side. If these guys aren't successful in hiring employees, what's going to happen? Well, you're going to see dining rooms closing down, portions of dining rooms closing down, guys being open for fewer shifts. I know a guy that can't open his restaurant. He's been waiting to open for a year. He needs 10 employees. He can't get them, so he can't do it. So you're going to see a ratcheting back, just a forced ratcheting back. And like I said, I know a guy he decided he just can't do it for a while, and his help wanted sign now says something like "See you in September." He shut his place down until September when he thinks the situation is going to improve. So there's two sides to this, and I think people have to understand that they have to be very, very appreciative and very patient with restaurants right now. It's a difficult time. It's like I said, unprecedented, and everybody's kind of unsure as to where it's going to end up. Like Tom said, these price increases, we don't even know where that's going to go, but they're going to go up.
Well, George Mahe, dining editor at St. Louis Magazine and the dean of St. Louis Food Writers, I want to thank you for joining us today and sharing your perspective.
Well, thanks. I mean, I'm usually the glass half full guy, but this is a serious situation now, and I think everybody needs to come to reckoning with the reckoning.
Well, I appreciate you hitting that home. I think it is something that the next time you're out and you're cursing the fact that your brisket costs what it costs, I hope people think about these things. And Tom Schmidt, owner of Salt and Smoke, maybe they'll be doing that at your restaurant and thinking about it while they're there in a positive way, right?
Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks for having me on.
Well, Tom, thank you so much for joining us today, and good luck filling those additional positions. St. Louis on the Air is a production of St. Louis Public Radio. Understanding starts here.
Do you find yourself regularly listening to episodes of St. Louis on the Air? Suggest us to a friend you think might enjoy our conversations. And leave us a review and rating on Apple Podcasts on the App Store. It's the simplest way to help people discover our show. Thanks.
St. Louis Public Radio is a member-supported service of the University of Missouri, St. Louis.
Support comes from the Missouri Forest Products Association, committed to conservation and careful management of the state's forests to make them more resilient and better habitats for wildlife. ChooseWood.com.